Hey, thanks for coming to 1500ESPN.com. I'm Derek Wetmore, and I'm going to share with you my 5 thoughts from Sunday's Twins game. A 2-0 win against the Milwaukee Brewers at Target Field. Let's get started right away with thought number 1. Mike Pelfrey was fantastic for the Twins. His 8 shutout innings helped the Twins salvage a game in this 3-game series. The Twins were at risk of getting swept on Sunday, but Mike Pelfrey played the stopper role, put an end to the losing streak, and really he was great. He was striking batters out with not only his split-fingered fastball, but also his sinker. And I think one of the more important stats from the game was the fact that Pelfrey pitched 8 innings. The only reliever that needed a throw on Sunday was Glenn Perkins, who picked up his 21st save in 21 tries. That's important for 2 reasons, I think. One of them probably more than the other. Saturday's game was a bullpen game. J.R. Graham started that. I mentioned in my last 5 Thoughts video. Pitched fine, 4 innings, 1 run, and then turned it over to the rest of the bullpen for the final 5 innings. So, the bullpen was a little bit taxed, even though they are carrying 8 pitchers out there right now. The Twins were kind of wondering, hey, if something happens to Pelfrey and for some reason he needs to get taken out with an injury or something like that in the first 2 innings, what are we going to do to get 7 innings? They basically had, I think, Casey Fien, Brian Dunston, Glenn Perkins. Some other people would have been fine to go, but might have been taxing. Now, here's why it's more important. That's point number 1. Point number 2, you got the Kansas City Royals coming to town on Monday. Mike Pelfrey's long start, the longest in his Twins career, I might add, sets them up to now have a fresh bullpen for the Kansas City series. Obviously, KC's got a good bullpen, and you want to be able to have the chess pieces to sort of match them late in games. Now Paul Molitor has the ability to use guys like Blaine Boyer, Casey Fien, Aaron Thompson, Brian Dunston, whoever the lefties he chooses to go with. He can play matchups late in the game. He doesn't have to worry about, is this guy available, is that guy available? No, because he had to throw Saturday and Sunday. Now I can't use him Monday. Mike Pelfrey basically set them up to have the tactical advantage in the Kansas City Royals series. That's why I spend so much time talking about Mike Pelfrey. I will get to the rest of my 5 thoughts, but Pelfrey's start was just so important. And it might have been his best of the year for the Twins. He's certainly been great through 2 months for them. Interested to see if that continues going forward. Thought number 2, the Twins scored 2 runs in the 2nd inning, and that turned out to be enough, although they did manage to strand 10 runners on base Sunday. That could have come back to bite them if it was, say, a 3-2 ball game, 4-2 ball game. You start looking at all the opportunities that you missed. The Twins didn't have to do that on Sunday because, as I mentioned, Pelfrey was so good, they didn't worry about that. But stranding 10 runners, not a long-term formula for success. I asked Paul Molitor about that after the game. He said the Twins try to just take a positive approach to that. They don't look back. They're not looking in the past at things that they might have missed. In fact, they're instead looking at what they accomplished, what they're doing in the present, and what will happen in the future. They're really the only 2 things you can control if the Twins aren't able to go back and change stranding any of those runners. I talked about some of the situations that they stranded in my 5 Thoughts column, so check that out at 1500ESPN.com for some of the missed opportunities that the Twins had. But as I mentioned, didn't cost them, so hard to harp too much on that one on Sunday. Thought number 3, Eddie Rosario drove in what turned out to be the game-winning run with his RBI double in the 2nd inning. He drove home Torrey Hunter from first base. But it was a read on the base paths that impressed me about Rosario. It didn't end up mattering, but I'll just quickly go over it. Rosario rounded second base as the relay was set up to go home from left field. He had singled out or doubled out to left field. The relay throw was set up to come to the plate, and Rosario read that. He rounded second base as far as the next closest middle infielder, so he could have gotten back to the bag if, in fact, they cut the play off and tried to go to second base to get Rosario. He got that little extra head start rounding second base, and then when he saw that the throw was going all the way through to home to try to get Torrey Hunter, it was too late, but it was headed to the plate. He was then in a much better position to take third base, and Rosario winds up standing on third. I say it didn't matter because then Eduardo Escobar ended up tripling him home. He could have scored from any of the bags. But it's plays like that that stand out to me because taking those extra bases over the course of a season, I very much believe that they do have that sort of cumulative effect. They can add to runs, which can add to wins, and if you're talking about a team that's potentially in the wild card race in sort of that mid-80s win range, every win is important, and therefore a lot of these runs are very important too. So I credited Eddie Rosario for making a heads-up play and taking third on that one, even if it didn't end up mattering in the final box score. Thought number 4, Eduardo Nunez was filling in for Trevor Plouffe at third base. Plouffe getting the day off. I wrote about that in the column. You can check that out, 1500ESPN.com. But the play that stood out to me the most for Eduardo Nunez was the final out of the 8th inning. Mike Pelfrey gave up a screaming line drive down the third base line with 2 outs and a man on in the 8th inning. Could have been a dangerous play. It could have been a double for Ryan Braun. Maybe could have even scored a run, given the Brewers, a 2-1 deficit with a runner on. But instead, it turned into an out because Eduardo Nunez made an athletic play to catch the line drive and got Mike Pelfrey and the Twins out of the 8th inning damage-free. Kept the shutout intact, and then they rolled it over, as I mentioned, to Perkins in the 9th inning. So big play from Nunez. He also had a pair of singles at the plate. Nice fill-in day. Expect to see Trevor Plouffe back in the lineup on Monday against the Royals. Thought number 5, I mentioned I talk about Plouffe sitting. Just a mental day for him, and a physical one too, but I think probably more of a mental, according to manager Paul Molitor's pregame comments. Plouffe's been scuffling. I think it was one of his last 24, and he'd made a couple of uncharacteristic errors in the field. Good day to get him a rest at the day game, and now heading into the Kansas City series, he should be fresh. I expect he'll snap that drought anytime here. I talked to him Saturday about sort of the woes, whether it's in the field or at the plate. And he said, look, maybe a younger me, I might have gotten razzled by this kind of thing. I might have thought, boy, I'm slumping, how can I fix it? Now, in my maturity, Plouffe said that, hey, this is just going to happen. Throughout the course of the season, you're going to have your ups, you're going to have your downs. Right now, I'm in a down period, and he made it sound like he very much expects to get out of it anytime soon. It's not really wearing on him, and you can kind of tell that maturity factor is there for Trevor Plouffe this year. That'll do it for this episode of 5 Thoughts, my video. But Phil Mackey and I just got done recording the Touch 'Em All podcast. So brand new episode. If you're watching this video right now, go to iTunes. Subscribe to the Touch 'Em All podcast. Phil Mackey and I talked for a little bit less than an hour this week about everything happening with the Twins, from Danny Santana's demotion to AAA Rochester, Kenny Vargas getting the call up. We talked a lot about Trevor May. We talked a lot about Mike Pelfrey, his great start, not only on Sunday, but his great start to the season. Should he be getting all-star consideration? Something that would have been crazy to talk about in spring trainings, now kind of looking a little bit more realistic. Lots of topics discussed on that episode of the Touch 'Em All podcast, so go check that out on iTunes right now, or else I've also posted it to SoundCloud and to the Sports Wire on 1500ESPN.com. That'll do it for this long-winded video. Thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate your time. And we'll catch you next time on 5 Thoughts. I'll probably check in with you after the Royals game. So, first place showdown in the American League Central. It's only June. It's only June. But a big series for the Twins and for the Royals coming up. We've gone way too long on this video, so I'm going to sign off. But thanks for coming, and I'll catch you next time.